At what the United States and other Western countries are saying. Thousands were in Washington on Sunday advocating medical freedom. We hear from some medical professionals who attended the event. Belgian police clash with demonstrators in Brussels. There, thousands gathered to protest the government's ever-tightening vaccine mandates. Will Russia invade Ukraine again after it seized the Crimean Peninsula in 2014? That's the big question. U.S. officials say it could happen at any time, and they're preparing on multiple fronts. NTD's Jessica Beatty reports.
The world is watching and waiting as Russian troops amass at the Ukrainian border. U.S. officials have warned invasion could be imminent, but Moscow said it has no plans to invade. Secretary of State Antony Blinken says diplomatic means are preferable, but other measures are on the table.
The paths are clear. Diplomacy, dialogue, seeing if we can build collective security in a way that is good for everyone is clearly the preferable path, but we're prepared either way.
In the meantime, the U.S. has been sending weapons to Ukraine and getting some Americans out of Ukraine. The State Department's reducing staff levels at the U.S. Embassy there.
Certain wires have been tripped because all embassies abroad have a plan that lays out precisely what it is that has to happen before these evacuations occur. Now, the assessment has come in that more things have happened, we're not exactly sure what those are yet, that have caused the State Department to say, yeah, families need to get out.
Democrats and Republicans are coming together to support a free Ukraine, but lawmakers differ on how Washington should respond. Democratic Senator Chris Coons told ABC Sunday he agrees with applying some sanctions now, but not all of them.
But the very strongest sanctions, the sorts of sanctions that we use to bring Iran to the table, is something that we should hold out as a deterrent to prevent Putin from taking the last step of invading Ukraine.
But Republican Senator Joni Ernst is calling for very aggressive action now.
So we do need to go ahead and impose sanctions on Russia now. We need to show them that we mean business and we will be there for Ukraine should they invade. Once an invasion happens, lives are lost. You can't go back from that.
President Biden met with his national security team at Camp David Saturday and said the U.S. is ready to impose consequences on Russia if necessary. Jessica Beatty, NTD News.
Britain is accusing the Kremlin of seeking to install a pro-Russian leader in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Russia has amassed troops at its border with Ukraine. Still, it insists it has no plans to invade. The UK's foreign ministry declined to provide evidence to back up its claims, but it comes at a time of heightened tensions between Russia and the West.
In a statement, Britain's Foreign Office said it had information that the Russian government was eyeing former Ukrainian lawmaker Yevhen Muriev to potentially head a pro-Russian leadership. Muriev, who opposes Ukraine's integration with the West, described the British Foreign Office as seeming confused. He told the Observer newspaper that the statement isn't very logical, adding that he is banned from Russia. The Russian Foreign Ministry dismissed the comments as disinformation and accused Britain and NATO of escalating tensions. The UK also said it had information that Russian intelligence services were maintaining links with numerous former Ukrainian politicians, including senior figures linked to ex-President Viktor Yanukovych, who fled to Russia in 2014 after 3 months of protests. The office of UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson also said he was planning to ramp up pressure on Russia this week by calling for European counterparts to come together with the United States.
The EU said today no decision has been made in order to order their diplomatic staff to leave Ukraine. Meanwhile, the European Commission has proposed a new financial aid package for Ukraine. It's meant to help the country address its financing needs due to the conflict. German Navy Chief K. Achim Schoenbach has resigned after making controversial comments over Ukraine. But Ukraine's ambassador to Germany said his resignation is not enough. The German naval commander stepped down over the weekend. He had drawn criticism for saying Russian President Vladimir Putin deserved respect and that Ukraine would never win back the annexed Crimea from Moscow. The Ukrainian envoy to Germany said on Twitter that his resignation was not sufficient to restore trust in German politics. Those comments came at a sensitive time amid Russia's military buildup along the Ukrainian border. Ukraine's foreign ministry had called on Germany to publicly reject its naval chief's remarks, saying they would undermine Western efforts to de-escalate the situation. The naval commander later apologized for his remarks. The German Defense Ministry has openly stated that his remarks don't reflect Germany's position. Protesters against mandates flooded the National Mall in Washington, D.C. over this weekend. They were calling for an end to mask and vaccine mandates. Thousands turned out in Washington on Sunday. They were marching to protest against COVID vaccine mandates. It was one of the largest U.S. events and protests of its kind since the pandemic began. During the midday, protesters marched around the Washington Monument to the Lincoln Memorial. A family practice physician from Chicago called for an end to vaccine mandates and made an appeal for personal choice.
They need informed consent. They need to know what the risks are of getting the disease and what the risks are of getting the vaccines. And the risk of the vaccines are real and they are not rare.
COVID cases in the U.S. have skyrocketed in recent weeks, and that includes in areas where many people are vaccinated. This brings the effectiveness of the vaccines into question, though federal officials have said they protect against severe disease and hospitalization. An internist at the Villages in Florida, which is the largest retirement community in the U.S., says vaccines should be used to help the vulnerable, but not forced on everyone.
We're not going to get out of this pandemic if you only concentrate on the vaccine. You have to have all the tools, early treatment, prophylaxis, whatever, give the message to everyone that, we focus on making people healthy, because if you're healthy, the chances of you dying from this disease is very low.
The Supreme Court struck down President Biden's vaccine mandate for private businesses on January 13th, but left the mandate in place for healthcare facilities. The protesters also decried mask mandates. Some held signs saying, "Make love, not mandates," and "Coercion is not choice." Some Democrat-governed states like California have brought back mask mandates for indoor public places, while many Republican-leaning states do not have mask requirements. Similar protests are also heating up in other states. Over the weekend, groups of Pennsylvanians joined a rally at the state's Valley Forge National Historic Park. Let's take a look.
Gathering in front of the National Memorial Arch, a group of Pennsylvanians staged a rally over the weekend, raising concerns amid ongoing restrictions to curb the pandemic.
We're here to stand for freedom to choose what gets put into our body and to defeat the unlawful mandates.
Rallygoers held up flags and placards that read "Defeat Mandates" and "Freedom over Fear." A retired health worker recalled his experience after contracting COVID-19. He said he was denied hospitalization over not being vaccinated.
That was my choice not to get vaccinated. But the thing is, the hospitals weren't treating me as a COVID-positive patient. They were treating me as an unvaccinated patient.
A nonprofit founder protested that mandates were negatively impacting her child.
My son was vaccine injured, and we did oxygen treatments with him, and our school is mandating masks. They're talking about, they are mandating the vaccine for our healthcare practitioners. That takes away so many options for my child's future.
While one former lawyer called it a breach of democracy when medical workers were fired for having different beliefs on vaccines.
American law began founded in natural law, which was the theology that justice was a revelation of God. People live by convictions, beliefs, religious values, personal values, not neutral principles.
The Sunday gathering was part of a global effort known as Worldwide Rally for Freedom. First started in Germany last spring, it spread to cities in more than 40 countries, including Japan and South Africa. NTD News, Philadelphia.
Protests are popping up outside U.S. borders, too. In Europe, crowds gathered in Brussels on Sunday to demonstrate against Belgium's new vaccine mandate. Police later stepped in as clashes broke out.
Thousands marched down the streets in Brussels to protest the Belgian government's pandemic restrictions. The country's prime minister announced last week that a booster shot is now mandatory to maintain the COVID pass. It's required 5 months after vaccination. One protester said the pass poses a false sense of security.
I work with elderly people, and they say, "Oh, I'm going to go to that event because it's safe." because there's a COVID safe ticket. And then they are sick. The next week they are sick from COVID.
That 5-month limit is among the tightest in Europe. For neighboring France, the deadline is 7 months, while the EU-wide guide for travel is set at 9. Another protester gave her take on the measure.
I have had the vaccine myself, but I was very angry that my children had to have the vaccine, and they just took it because of the freedom. They want to travel. They want to do a sport competition, and they can't do it without a vaccine. But they didn't want to, but it's just blackmail.
In response to the gathering, Belgian riot police came out in force and eventually moved in to disperse the protesters. Police used water cannon trucks, while the thick smoke of tear gas filled the air. COVID-19 case numbers are reaching a peak in Belgium, with more than 40,000 new infections reported each day.
Coming up, one NYPD officer is killed and another is critically wounded. They were responding to a domestic disturbance call. NYC Mayor Eric Adams addresses the violence.
You worked hard for your money. You invest in stability for your retirement and your family's future, to build and leave them with something greater. The next unprecedented financial crisis, political misstep, or unstable government can depreciate it all away. It was called the gold standard for a reason, the financial preservation of tomorrow. Diversify your assets against inflation, market volatility, and the unknown with real money. Hedge your wealth with the purest form of money, physical gold and silver. Because any currency printed on paper can be manipulated. What's backing up your IRA? Do what you need to do right now to be prepared with the Reagan Gold Group. Visit now, rggusakit.com, or call us at 866-912-1384. Receive up to $2,500 in free silver coins and a free safe with your new precious metals IRA. Call now.
Oh, hey, doesn't it feel like there's communists everywhere? In fact, the Chinese Communist Party has been subverting America from every angle. So whether it's compromising our politicians, controlling Hollywood, manipulating Wall Street, or infiltrating our schools, they have stopped at nothing to take down America. And I believe that in order for us to not become like China, we need citizens who know the truth. So go on over to GetEpic.com, stay informed with a subscription to the Epic Times, and you will get instant access to this infographic.
What do an aerospace engineer, cancer immunologist, and bat scientist all have in common? We all have cool jobs in STEM fields. Whether it's building robots or learning to code, girls everywhere are finding their passion for science, technology, engineering, and math through positive role models and mentors. So dare to dive in, get connected, and explore. You never know what your future may hold. Learn more about these and even more cool jobs at SheCanSTEM.com.
Hundreds of California residents were forced to evacuate an area along the coastline over the weekend. This after strong winds pushed a mountain wildfire toward the coast. Officials say the fire broke out Friday night in a canyon in the Big Sur area of California's coastline. The blaze quickly burned 1,500 acres of brush and redwood trees. Authorities issued evacuation orders for about 500 residents and closed a stretch of Highway 1. Bixby Bridge, a famous landmark featured in car commercials, movies, and TV shows, was also closed. Strong winds were also recorded across the San Francisco Bay Area. Trees and power lines were knocked down, and at least 18,000 Pacific Gas and Electric customers experienced power outages. New York City prepares to lay a police officer to rest. He was killed on Friday night while responding to a domestic disturbance call. His partner was also wounded and is fighting for his life. NTD's Andrew Thomas reports.
As funeral services for 22-year-old New York City police officer Jason Rivera were being finalized, Mayor Eric Adams urged city residents to stay united.
No matter what philosophical differences we have, the killers assaulted our officers. And this is a battle between the killers and New Yorkers. And we are not going to lose that battle. and we're not going to be divided by their violence.
On Sunday, a procession carrying Rivera's remains departed the medical examiner's office as colleagues lined the streets of Manhattan. Adams entreated people.
But I'm saying to New Yorkers, don't give up. Don't surrender to violence. Violence will surrender to us, and we're not going to live in the shadows of killers.
Rivera and Officer Wilbert Mora were shot Friday night while answering a call about an argument between a woman and her adult son. Adams spoke on the nature of recent violence against police. 5 officers shot, and the underlying causes are really revealing. The one yesterday was a domestic incident. The one on Staten Island was a domestic incident. It keeps talking about the feeder of violence and what is causing this violence to take place in this city. Mora was critically wounded. The shooter was also wounded. He has been identified as LaShawn McNeil. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Former Alaska governor and one-time vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin will try to convince jurors that the New York Times and a former editor, James Bennett, defamed her. Opening statements are due to take place as soon as today in a New York federal court.
Palin has spent the last 4.5 years battling the newspaper in a lawsuit over an editorial she said falsely linked her to a deadly Arizona mass shooting that left 6 people dead and then U.S. Congresswoman Gabby Giffords seriously wounded. The editorial said, quote, "The link to political incitement was clear, and that it came after Palin's Political Action Committee circulated a map putting Democrats, including Giffords, under stylized crosshairs." The trial marks a rare instance of a major media company defending its editorial practices before an American jury. Palin bears a high burden of proof in the case, as she must show by clear and convincing evidence that there was actual malice involved in the newspaper's editorial writing process. The U.S. Supreme Court adopted the actual malice standard in a landmark 1964 ruling that made it difficult for public figures to win libel lawsuits. Palin has already signaled in court papers that she will challenge that precedent on appeal if she loses at trial. And 2 current Supreme Court justices, conservatives Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, have suggested revisiting that standard.
The trial is expected to take 2 weeks, and Palin's attorneys haven't said when or if Palin will appear in court herself. Google is being sued for allegedly using deceptive practices to track the locations of its users. The District of Columbia filed a lawsuit against the tech giant today. It alleges that Google has used dark patterns to track physical locations, even when users try to block the company's efforts. According to the lawsuit, this happens with all of Google's users, whether you are on an Apple or Android device, or just using a computer. The lawsuit claims Google misled people about how they can opt out of tracking by failing to mention other settings that collect data without your knowledge. Google has not responded to the lawsuit. Similar lawsuits will be filed in Texas, Indiana, and Washington State. The tax season starts today, as January 24th is the first date the IRS will accept and process tax returns. This year, parents are advised to keep a special eye out for an IRS mailing known as Letter 6419. The letter pertains to 2021's Advanced Child Tax Credit, which was paid out from July through December. Families received up to $300 for each kid aged 5 and under, and $250 for children between 6 and 17. Letter 6419 will help parents accurately report the amount of money they received up front in 2021. If parents did not receive one or more child tax credit payment, they are encouraged to call the IRS at 800-908-4184. Now we take a dive into the cryptocurrency space. The token company Many Worlds just broke a record on the decentralized finance platform Evergrow. It sold 1,260 Binance coin and then saw big growth on the exchange DEX. I wanted to learn more about this, so I spoke with Many Worlds COO Stephen Bombera, who explains how this token works.
So starting with the tokenomics side of things, our token actually rewards you in stablecoin. Now, stablecoin are tokens or coins that are pegged directly to the US dollar, meaning having it being received, it is not some sort of volatile, fluctuating thing. That is simply a token that is represented as the US dollar. So we reward that once per week, similar to dividends. Without diving too much into the tokenomics, there are some pretty large problems that we solved for the rewards distribution in the crypto space by creating a marginal tax system, which has never been done before in the space of crypto.
So what was the attitude like at the company Many Worlds when you guys broke Evergrow's pre-sale record?
Pure bliss. I mean, we were on a live stream at the time, and I remember screaming. I was screaming into the camera. I was unbelievably excited. I couldn't believe it was happening. You know, we had it set for 3 days to do this, and we were going to go talk to investors. We were going to do it like a seed round, similar to, you know, a startup, because that's really what we are here. And the fact that it took 3 hours to sell out, all of it, just complete happiness. I don't know how else to put it, just happiness.
So, Stephen, how can Americans take advantage of this opportunity investing in the token, and what are the risks?
Well, there's quite significant risks. You have regulation risk. You have tokens that pop up and then vanish overnight. You have to be very, very careful about choosing where you're going to invest in crypto. There is a lot of volatility as well. Now, currently, to purchase Many World tokens, you have to either purchase Bitcoin or something, or BNB, and then you would swap for Many World. So it's quite complex on purchasing anything in the DeFi space. If you wanted to learn about that, you'd want to join some sort of crypto community. But the first thing we're delivering, looking mid-February, is the ability to purchase with nothing but your debit card. So if you want to wait until mid-February to get involved with something like Many Worlds, that will be possible. But if you're the type that's willing to learn a little bit about the space and get in early before everyone else is able to buy, that's something you would do in DeFi.
Bombera says a lot of people view tokens as a currency, but the paying out of dividends has been introduced into cryptocurrency, and now Bombera says tokens are being viewed more as a stock than a currency. He says that seems to be the way the world of cryptocurrency is headed, but he says there are a lot of regulatory concerns and unknown territory involved in this. Just ahead, the ruins of an underwater Roman city draw tens of thousands of visitors each year. The ancient city used to be a playground for Roman senators and emperors. That's before it sunk in the 4th century. In the Mediterranean Sea, just a few miles from the Italian city of Naples, is an ancient Roman city submerged under the waves. It's now the world's largest underwater museum, and tourists visit the site year-round. Let's take a look.
In the days of the Roman Empire, the town of Baia was a playground for senators, wealthy Roman citizens, and emperors. Julius Caesar, Cicero, Hadrian, Augustus, Mark Antony, and countless others all visited Baia, where they kept villas and palaces.
Baia was a place where people had fun, ancient Roman style. We're talking thermal tourism and also ego-gastronomic tourism, as we call it, because there were products of excellence from this area, both at sea and on land. The great wines of Campania, or the farming of mollusks, oysters, fish from Lake Reno.
But towards the end of the Roman Empire in the late 4th century, the land began to sink below sea level due to volcanic activity. Changes beneath the Earth's surface led to a periodic lowering or raising of the ground level.
The drawback, mentioned in ancient sources, was that Baia was often referred to as a place of ruin where people came for excellent and noble reasons, such as thermal therapies, but then they carried out practices much less related to those activities and more related to personal enjoyment.
The ruins of Baia were discovered by chance in 1969. Further excavations took place in the 1980s, but no excavations have been carried out since then, and a large portion of the ancient city still remains undiscovered.
400 meters of remains stretch from the current coastline. Therefore, many settlements, many houses, many baths are still to be discovered and are only minimally known. Columns, new floors, new mosaics are constantly emerging during the research that the park is conducting, and in particular, next spring, we will begin excavating one of these places.
The underwater park has become one of the main attractions of the archaeological park in the region. About 15,000 people come to visit every year through snorkeling, diving, or aboard boats.
You've heard about raining cats and dogs, but what about raining teddy bears? That's exactly what happened at one hockey club this weekend when thousands of plush bears were tossed onto the ice in Pennsylvania. The ice arena is home to the Hershey Bears minor league team, which held its teddy bear toss event for charity. The Bears are a minor league affiliate team of the NHL's Washington Capitals. They last held the event in 2019 when over 45,000 stuffed toys graced the ice. But the team and eager fans smashed that record this time around, collecting in a whopping 52,000 bears for this year's toss, each one to be donated across 25 different organizations and charities in the community. The Bears' first goal of the game triggers the launch of the piles of plush, this year during a power play in first period. After a 30-minute game delay for cleanup, the Bears went on to defeat the Hartford Wolfpack 5-0. Thanks for watching. At NTD, we're honored to be your source for the news. Catch us again tonight at 6:30 Eastern. In New York City, I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selected videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.